All right. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back, everybody.
How you
Hope you guys
doing?
doing well. I'm good. Um, Feeling good today. Energy's right. All is
Excellent.
well.
Because we're talking about a meaty subject today.
Yes, I definitely made sure I got a good night's rest.
Okay. We love that.
I feel ready to take on some of the tougher things. I think to understand.
Yeah.
I think especially in this day and age, there's a lot of just conversation out there. A lot of folks are looking for quote unquote answers, but hopefully, I think for us, while
Well, without further ado, what we're talking about, we are talking about masculine and feminine energy. Okay. So we're entering the chat here. We are not talking about male versus female because we're not going to perpetuate that narrative. Like, if we do that, all it's going to be is like me against you. And there's just never any, I just feel like there's never any like winning.
Yeah, it's just about who can shout the loudest.
Yeah.
And who can
No, I'm right. No, I'm right.
win argument. No,
yeah.
I only got time for
so
that.
We are going to talk about masculine and feminine energies today. And I think that's so important too that we expand what this means, because then that isn't dependent on how you identify. That's not dependent on your sexual preferences. Like, our viewpoint is that we believe that we all have masculine and feminine energies. And we'll get into the definition in a second here, but we operate with both sides. And I feel like, for me, the healthiest version of myself is when there's balance between those two.
Yep.
And also how they show up in relationships.
Mm-hmm. And I think the key word for us is, and for everybody listening, is like energies, right?
Energies. 2023, baby. We're talking energies.
What are you giving off?
What are you giving off?
Vibes are
what are you saying without saying anything at all?
Exactly.
What are you coming into the room with? It's your energies. Okay, so we're getting very specific here. We're going to get into a definition, because let's ground ourselves in that. So we have this gorgeous chart that I found. We'll link in the bio, and then we'll also pop it up on the screen here, hopefully somewhere. But it's about masculine and feminine energies, and really what it means is that there's overlap, and in between is really where there's balance.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read off the masculine energy. Masculine energy is all about doing. It's doing mode. It's giving. It's logical mind. It's external. How does that show up? It's projective, focused, achieving, planning, confident, goal-oriented, and driven. All great qualities.
Yep.
Something that you'd want for yourself, someone you'd want in your partner. How this shows up if there's an imbalance is aggressiveness, confrontational, controlling, micromanaging, and competitive. Those start to get some.
That's where it gets dicey.
Yeah, a little dicey there. So that's masculine energy, and then you're going to read off feminine.
Let's go over the feminine energy. So first off, it's being mode. Some keywords are receiving, intuitive mind, internal. Some of the descriptors for feminine energy: receptive, fluid, allowing, feeling, empathetic, vulnerable, creative.
All gorgeous things too, like
beautiful, sound qualities. And so where it gets a little tricky, the imbalances in feminine energy: powerless, manipulative, needy, oversensitive, and codependent.
Okay, real talk. I have been every single one of these things on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not here to judge.
Nobody's judging.
It's a continual balance, and it's a continual rebalance, and an understanding yourself and how that shows up.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we're talking about this, because I think that this is the next frontier. Like I said, it's not men versus women. Like, we both identify as heterosexual. I'm into men, you're into women.
Yep.
But so it's so important, and so truly a better way to think about it, that I can encapsulate both those things. And additionally, I want both of those energies in any relationship I'm in.
Yeah.
Specifically romantically. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your experience. Like, when did this start to register?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for myself, it was so kind of taking a step back in how I grew up.
Yeah.
West African, Liberia specifically, household where the roles are very traditional. women are providing for the home, cooking. Beauty is a big part of the value in that space.
Got it.
Whereas from the male side of things, you're a provider. But there's also this unapologetic energy with it too, whereas like you can kind of be an asshole in some situations
Yeah.
just because you're the head of the household, or you can choose to not engage in certain conversations because they're quote unquote too sensitive,
Mm.
or that's where the mom will come in to she handles those type of things.
Yeah.
And so where I guess I noticed it, especially growing up and having interactions with women that I'm trying to pursue, women that I'm friends with, males that are in my friend group, and watching how they move and type of energies they give off. It's for me, I noticed the real change, or it really became front of mind when I got into a relationship
Yep.
from a perspective of what I was attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
Because personally, I like women that exude high levels of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
that are direct.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe those would be on the more masculine energy side of things,
Veering a
right?
little bit more
Veer a little bit
masculine,
that.
yeah,
Yep.
energy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But also I understood that part of my biggest, I think, characteristics or good energy that I get off, I'm very empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
I can listen to anybody's situation
Yeah.
and sit with them in that energy. And I
Yep.
don't necessarily want to brush it off. I can go deep into that conversation,
Yes.
which I think resides on the more feminine energy scale of things. But once you are in a day-to-day relationship with somebody and
Mhm.
they're showing you different energies with how they deal with trauma, how they deal with confrontation, then you can really see and gauge like, wow, this is different than what I'm used to. One of the things that I think subconsciously we might do is, if you're in a situation, how would your known entity approach that? So for me, like, what would my mom do in this situation? What would my sister do in this situation?
Mm.
And then I'm comparing that to my partner
Okay.
and noticing if there's a difference,
Okay.
right? One of the most embarrassing stories that my mom put me in, especially with women, was she would just, again, the thought to her mouth are very connected.
Yeah.
She doesn't. There's no pause there. And I think my mom was cooking something, and I had a lady friend over. My mom was basically like, "Can she cook?"
Oh no.
But not like asking me in private.
Right.
She is in the kitchen. We are in the living room. She reaches over through the little cutout, says, "Can she cook?" Looking at me. And I was like, well, she's right here. If you like to ask her that question. And you could clearly see that is from my mom's mindset. That's the value.
Mm.
And later on, I kind of had to challenge her on that. And like, why would you say something like that? And she was speaking more from I want to make sure my son is quote unquote taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she's viewing as care, right? But
All
again,
love to your mother, but just know that George can pick up a frying pan and make his own meals too.
Well, she also made sure that, like, I don't trust these American women. Let me make sure you
Okay.
you have some basic skills. But again, it was just like it became very apparent, when you're challenged on those things, or when you just have to be very mindful of those.
Yeah.
And
like, let's have a caveat. Like, no
Yeah.
disrespect to your mother. Like,
Yeah.
she's a lovely human,
Yeah.
and she has her own history and like how she shows up,
Exactly.
right? But it's so important to say, kind of, when you look from your background and how you were raised, like, what you allow will continue. So, are these
Exactly.
things that I want to continue? Are they things that I want to adjust?
Yeah.
Or are we completely evolving here?
Mm-hmm.
So would you, like, on the spectrum, where would you say, like, is it a complete revolution or an evolution of energies?
It was definitely an evolution, because I realized that you can be attracted to quote unquote masculine energy.
Yeah.
And if you see in a woman, and I had to realize, like, oh, this is the woman that I'm looking at. If I say, like, hey, talk to my boys, like, I'm interested in this person, and they would say, like, oh, well, she doesn't do this, or she doesn't give off this energy, or and then that's a very clear division right there. That then an opportunity for you and your friends to kind of talk about, ideally, again, if they're more mature enough to have this conversation. But I think it opened up my frame of reference in terms of my partner doesn't have to fit this stereotypical silhouette of, sit in the house, be a provider, be a nurturer.
Yeah.
I also want somebody that can quote unquote, step into some real tough situations, take charge,
Yeah.
and not always feel like all the pressure is on me to provide that in the relationship. And I think that allows, again, for a different appreciation, but also an acknowledgement of, oh, these frameworks or these typical things aren't the only way to operate.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you stick to those, that's where a lot of friction can start, because folks start behaving maybe against their intuitive
Sure.
energies that they want to give off.
Or their lane is so narrow that they don't have.
Yeah, there's no room to operate.
Yeah, there's no room for any sort of deviation from that.
Yeah.
Would you say that like your male friends, like are they still kind of in the narrative of like a woman should, or are they a little bit more evolved?
Some are.
Okay.
Definitely still have some immature friends, but I think it's the ones who've gone through, I think, real time in with someone, right? I think, for example, one of my best friends, he's been with his partner the longest.
Uh-huh.
And he and I can have like real conversations about just the ebb and flow of how when they started, kind of how things are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the friends of mine who are single and still, quote unquote, like chasing and in a pursuit, they're a little bit more narrow-minded because they're operating from a space of what they're trying to target. And when you're trying to target something that again, that takes a shape.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only aiming at women that give off this. So
Yeah.
I'm only aiming at environments that help me feel like I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And as soon as something is off, I'm on to the next target. And, that's a real opportunity for, I think, a lot of folks, whether you're male or female, but it's just the noticing of what you're pursuing, and then what happens when you find that, or what happens if you don't find that.
Mm.
Is there room for you to maybe relook at how you're going about things? Because again, in this day and age, I think in general, confidence is a higher value.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are standing in true in who they are, as opposed to maybe
not even confidence, because I think that you can lack confidence but still be authentic. I think authentic is really the key identifier there.
Yeah.
Because it's so fulfilling to just be who you are.
Exactly.
And that takes far less work than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that I feel like I'm late to the game in terms of like understanding. I grew up in a very traditional Midwestern, pretty secluded, like narrow-minded. Mm-hmm. So I would say that my journey has been a little bit more revolutionary, in the sense that, I'm a woman and I date men, but I think that the rub has been in showing me the difference between these two energies in my romantic relationships. And I don't know necessarily when it started. I mean, my first real relationship, my big one, my marriage, I would say that I probably exuded a little bit more masculine energy, in the sense that it really was, I kind of got the say. And for me, I just wasn't comfortable operating in that space. That was one of the things that I knew wasn't aligned for me. Is that, I think there's a negative connotation to like succumbing to someone, or like to surrendering to someone. But I think that that's really beautiful. And I think that can happen on both sides. And in my marriage, I didn't feel like I could fully surrender and allow this person to lead me, because I just had a more aggressive voice. I'm a fire sign. I'm a Sagittarius. Like, I just naturally am a little bit more dominant. And I like that about myself. I think that makes me dope. But I also am looking for a partner who can say, chill. Respectfully. Because I got you. Right. You can trust me. And I'm not looking for competitiveness. I'm not looking for someone to corral me. I'm looking for someone who can say, you don't need to wear the armor all the time.
Right. Share some of that
Yeah.
burden a little bit.
And I love a masculine man. I like, we've talked about, you know, in the first date, like a guy opening a door. I find that
Yeah.
a very, it's taking charge, it's taking initiative. I
Yeah.
like those qualities, but I also like when my partner is vulnerable, and I like when my partner talks about his feelings. For me, that shows a great trust
Yeah.
in me, that I've created a safe space that he feels comfortable enough to say that. Because I think as a society, we've talked about this,
Mhm.
as a society, we don't necessarily create the most space for men to be emotional
Yeah.
and vulnerable. And for me, that's so important. I think that's what builds intimacy. I think
Mhm.
that's what builds closeness, is
Yeah.
like, let me see the stuff that's going on in your head. And here's the thing. I don't necessarily might have an answer for you, but I'm sure as hell going to be here to listen to you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to create a safe environment so that you feel like you can share that with me. And I think that's what balance looks like for me in romantic relationships.
Yeah. I feel like that it has to be, especially if the goal again is to become more intimate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from, the male side of things is like, yeah, let me hold in all these feelings and, let me quote unquote stuff everything down. But if you're in an environment where it's safe and somebody is asking you really like, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
I think that is the perfect time to, again, shed off that armor.
Yeah.
And, okay, let me indulge in this space or this energy that is not the traditional space for me to operate in, because there is we're just multifaceted human beings.
Yeah.
And if we don't allow for the safe space for the different energies to flow out, it just you're naturally kind of doomed. And I also feel that in some instances, the revealing of different energies can be a little nerve-wracking, because like I have friends that say everything was cool up until this energy related thing happened.
Yeah.
And then I had to take a step back, or then I was like, something's off. So there is that fear,
Of course,
to wear a different hat.
Yeah.
And I think that is the piece that's where I get really, that's the sad part about, because we're human and we're choosing to shun part of our existence, something that again leads to more intimacy,
Yeah.
for the simple fact that I don't want to reveal this side of me because I'm fearful of what it might mean, or you might look at me,
Mhm.
different if I decide to say like, hey, today is just not my day and I just need to.
Yeah. And that's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Why
I just
wouldn't
need
you
to
want to
sit
be
in
able to
some
say that?
sorrow. I just need to sit and feel bad for, quote unquote, feel bad for myself,
Yeah.
and be present, right? And then have a partner that hopefully has that empathy to hear that and listen to that. So,
Well, and let's be honest, like as a society, we naturally value the more masculine energy.
Yeah.
We are a society of doing. We
Mhm.
are a society that celebrates achievement
Yeah.
and
yeah,
kind like aggression. So I think even depending, it doesn't matter how you identify. I think the feminine energy is the harder one
hmm
to show up with and to achieve
yeah,
and to like have consistency in,
hmm
because that's just all about being.
yeah,
And it's not tied to an achievement, and it's not tied to an objective. And as a society, we're less supportive of that.
yeah.
And
'Cause we don't know what to do with it.
yeah, that's a real shame.
Yeah.
That's a real shame.
If you're not on track, we live in LA right now, and if you're meeting somebody and if you don't have 12 things that you can talk
Right.
about that like you
Yeah.
got going on,
Got my
it's like,
6 side hustles and my
it's like you just feel less of a human, which is again so sad, because we all need space for that figuring out, and that just again being present. I was telling you that I did a plant journey not too long ago, and one of the more insightful comments that our guide had mentioned was, we again focus on the masculine, the doer,
Yeah.
the drive, and we almost totally forget about that other side, and how vital that is to becoming a complete human being.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily about one side versus the other. It's like, no, your goal is to be complete, and you can't be complete if you're just constantly focusing and building one muscle.
Yeah.
Right? you need to be able to flex some those other sides of you, not only to become, I think, a better partner, but to actually know yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
And I
uh,
think generationally, like we as a generation, I think we're just getting our traction here. I
yeah,
think previous generations have been more tied to traditional female and male roles
yep,
that
yep,
lines up with a lot of things like, voting rights and
yeah,
all of these things that we will not get into.
no,
But we can connect the dots backwards and to say like, we understand why we're here, but like it's time to move this conversation forward. And
yeah,
that's why I'm so glad we're having it
mhm,
because I think we're also in the midst of it.
yeah, literally. And one of the things, being a father, that I think kids really, you hear all the different ways that your life will change when you have children. And I think one of the things that relates to this conversation is, I know how I want my son to be in this world, meaning like I want him to be very multifaceted. I want him to be able to, and go through his feelings. I want him to also
Be
take
creative.
charge, and
Yeah.
all the things that,
Yeah.
all of those descriptor words that we just said on both
You want him to be
sides.
balanced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so because I have that desire for him, I'm checking myself more,
Gorgeous.
and so if I'm in a situation where he's, let's say he's having a little temper tantrum, or let's say he's just having a tough time dealing with something,
Yeah.
and he chooses to like sit in it for a second. So, well, let me be present here with you,
Yeah.
and let's talk it out.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always try to like encourage him to do is use his words,
Mm-hmm.
because I wish I heard that more growing up. I wish I heard a directive to, hey, get out what you're going through. Don't let it sit in here.
Yeah.
Don't try to, distract yourself from this. It's like, no, we're sitting in
Power
this,
through, punch
power
holes.
through,
Like, yeah.
rub some dirt on it,
Yeah.
right? Like, what does that even mean? It's like, you need to be able to articulate what you're going through so that you can receive that help, or
Yeah.
just that awareness or understanding. So he's been, I think, a really big teacher in that phase
Such a
of
mirror
life.
for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
I love
sure.
that.
Yeah, and again, not everybody has a personal situation that allows them those insights.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not even having a discussion, if we don't even know that there's two different energies to engage with, where I only see that kind of negative pattern of those traditional fit into this box, and if you're not in these box, like something is wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like that's not the way to go about it, and to just again reach that complete level of being a human.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like as a child, the thing that I wish I would have heard more is how are you feeling? Talk about your feelings because I'm a very emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of feelings. And I think for a majority of my life, those feelings were probably misdirected and over exaggerated because I wasn't used to talking about them. And so, where it shows up more negatively, like the feminine energy of, being codependent and being needy and being manipulative.
Yeah.
Those are probably some of the attributes that I had in my early 20s because I just wasn't finessed enough in healthy feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I am a girl, but like being a girl and having feminine energy, they are not interchangeable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. You have to be able to sort out the difference between those two.
Yeah.
And so I think to that point, it's like you really have to work on that balance within yourself first.
Yeah.
So that you can show up in a relationship. And I think that that's something that I've learned the past couple years is because I think I've looked now on relationships that I've had that were unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that they were unsuccessful is that I was too much in my masculine energy. And I knew that that was not a sustainable place. And eventually, push comes to shove and you have the blow up fight or and you just, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe enough to feel like I could be taken care of when I needed to be taken care of emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when my, feminine energy was so unaccounted for.
Yeah.
And it just, it didn't work. And so I had to now really take a look at what does that balance look like in me. And something that I've had to really work on is working on my feminine energy. So one of my favorite ways to do this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
I take myself on me dates.
Mm.
It's a very indulgent space, and I love it.
Mm.
Like, first of all, it always includes sleeping in. Like,
Yeah.
there's no alarm set. It's usually on the weekend,
Yeah.
very much on the weekend, but
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no alarm set. It is very much like, what does your heart's desire want to do today? And that's really about what being is for me. There's no objective. I don't have errands to run. I don't have a return to make. I don't have some like deliverable that I have to do for work.
Yeah.
It is like, what's going to make my spirit fulfilled?
Yeah.
And it always includes going to an art museum. That's
Yeah.
like
That's
like
that's stop number one.
well, it's not stop number one. I obviously get my favorite coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Start the day off on a delicious caffeinated front, and
Yeah.
then I'll go to an art museum. For me, museums are like where I can feel my blood pressure just really drop. I feel like I can, it fuels my creativity. It fuels my desire to see things of beauty. Usually, like architecturally, they're very beautiful spaces. They're very calming.
Yeah.
Usually people are pretty quiet, which I
Exactly.
like.
Yeah.
I like some quietness.
Yeah.
And I just like take things in, and I really try to tell myself to like absorb the art, absorb the experience. Because again, I think the other thing is like we are a society of going on our phones, like, and it's just about being present and just being there.
Yeah.
And then I usually take myself to the gift shop. And I, depending on how much cash I'm willing to drop, I usually like either really love to get a book from an exhibit that really spoke to me, or like one time I bought a journal. And it's just like a really good way of just dialing into and saying, hey, I hear what you need, and I'm going to give you that. And it's going to be everything that you need, and just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just enjoy it. And like those days, I can think about I probably do it maybe like 3 or 4 times a year, which is not enough.
Yeah.
But it's those days where I'm just like, I do everything for me, and it's so gorgeous. So
yeah, it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
Like you said. And it's funny you mentioned journal, because I was thinking to myself while you're talking, like, what are some of the ways that I intentionally try to get that balance?
Yeah.
I think being a former athlete, I'm drilled into my head of move on to the next play. Don't worry about the tough situation that you just went through. Nobody has time to hear out your problem. Like it's wild to hear about the phrases that are drilled into our head in that space.
Yeah.
Because that can perpetuate to so many other areas of your life. And one of the, I think, vital skill sets that I've garnered over the past few years is journaling. And if I even think back to like middle school or even high school, I don't even think any of me or like my friends or anybody back then would even know where to start if somebody said, "Hey, do you journal, or do you have a journal?" Like, what?
Excuse you?
Like for class? Are you talking for this class that we're in right now? No, it's like where do you pour out the things that are in your head, or that you don't have a space to talk about? And even when I was in therapy, couples therapy, and we had this assignment to write in like run-on sentence form. And again, as a doer in that masculine energy, I write lists. I have bullet points or dashes. It is one or the other. And I look at that list, and then it's like, all right, let's start attacking things one at a time. And I struggled with that. I struggled with, how do I write and just keep going. Like, I don't stop. Like, where's the stopping point? Oh, I don't have to stop. And I think I wrote like, it was a handful of like at least 10 pages. And
once the floodgates were open,
it's like, I'm in my mid-20s. This is my first time ever like getting it out.
It probably felt so good.
Oh my gosh. And I was like, oh, this is what journaling is?
Yeah.
Or this is a safe space that all these thoughts are on this sheet of paper and out of my head. Now my head has a little bit more space to
breathing room,
exactly. And I was so appreciative of that, because had I not been in that situation, I don't know when or who would have introduced that to me. um, as a tool and as a resource to tap into that, because some of the things that I was writing, it made me laugh, it made me sad, upset. Like you get a chance to really ride each emotion and
So
ride it all the
healthy.
way through
Yeah.
until, okay, I'm done with that. Moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write about this, how it makes me feel. Okay, I'm done with that. On to the next thing. And so that's something that I continue to do even to this day, because it was such an empowering thing to do, and realization to have, that again allowed me to really find that balance. Because I don't know, I think about it, I think once you do have that balance, that's when you feel your most self. That's when you feel, quote unquote, the most powerful,
Authentic, aligned.
authentic. Like
Yeah.
everything is center,
Yeah.
and you need both. And whereas I think we get caught up in the, if I don't have all these checks, or if I don't exude all these characteristics, how can I be powerful, or when am I ready? It's like, no, ready means you have a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that I think is really helpful. So, if you're listening and you haven't picked up a journal, or you just, don't have a safe space to maybe talk about some of the things you're going through,
Or
put
you're
those things on
testing it
paper.
out. You're like, you
Yeah.
know what? I might not feel safe with the people around me,
Yeah.
but like I can write it down on paper, and I'm gonna start to try all this out.
Yeah.
My favorite journal prompt is just literally write, I don't know what I want to talk about, and it like allows you that opportunity to just like kind of open that. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm feeling, and then honestly, I promise it'll just start pouring out.
Yeah.
I also think our friendship and our relationship is such a great testing and trial
Yeah.
place, because I mean, I speak for myself, but I feel very emotionally safe with you,
Mhm.
and you do such a good job of holding space for things that you might not understand, or like shit that I just need to get off my chest.
Yeah.
I need to be emotional. I need to talk about my feelings. And I think our relationship is such a, that's kind of the bridge with, you're working on it individually, and it's time to
Mhm.
graduate, and like,
Yeah.
let's work on it with our friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be male, female friends. It could be, I have female friends who show up, they have a lot of feminine energy or a lot of masculine energy. So there really is that gorgeous balance. And you can start to really see how
Mhm.
they interact and they play with each other. Like once you have the acknowledgement of these energies existing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, especially now that I feel very aware of them, I know when I'm in one energy versus the other.
Yeah.
I think that also allows whoever you're dealing with, relationship or not, friend, family member, because I've also found that my conversations with my family specifically
Mm-hmm.
have gotten easier, even though we're talking about quote unquote harder things. So one of the like conversations that I had recently with a cousin of mine, who he's older, so he comes from that mindset of like, I need to hit these metrics, or I need to accomplish these things within my energy to feel value. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, bro, like that's not it. I don't know what our uncles told you, but like I felt like, one, he needed to hear that, and two, I also needed to show, how do you have this conversation?
Yeah.
What are some of the questions that you ask? And then also an acknowledgement of like, this isn't easy. Like, don't feel like you're failing some test right now.
No.
Or you don't have to answer. You don't have to get these answers right here, right now. You can let them fester, and you can like
Simmer. Yeah.
Let those things simmer, because, and it's almost like, again, you can feel the weight off of folks' shoulder when they're talking, when you got them in that comfort space. And then again, the floodgates open. We
Yeah.
start talking about right left situations that I didn't even know that he was going through.
Right.
And
the acknowledgement, and the allowing of like, you don't have to have an answer, is an exact how feminine energy shows up. You can just be and not have the answer right now.
Yeah.
Like sit in your feelings. And that's a perfect way of like kind of allowing that energy to show up gradually or comfortably as well.
Because let's be real, like most things are a process, right? You can't go from
and we're both speaking to it like we're experts, and like by no means. I mean, we might have a conversation later today, and I might, show up as a version that, I don't.
But I think, step number one is the awareness side of it, because if you're aware of it, you can do something about it
Yeah.
or not. And if you're just, again, operating with the total, you're just oblivious to it, like that's where it's just really hard, because once you, for me specifically, big comfort levels in my life where I can honestly say like I know who George is,
Mm.
something I had to sacrifice something. Something had to like something that I was holding on to just had to be left behind, because and most of those things were like I say, a lot of them were in that masculine energy, being able to like control any situation, having the answers for things, or even sometimes just I don't feel driven right now. And I was thinking like, am I falling behind in some race? Like this isn't a race. Like nobody's racing here. Like
Because the end
calm that
goal is
down.
dying. So like, let's not get there too
Right,
fast.
exactly. Let's not
I'm going to
solve
need
all
you
the
around.
things, and so just being comfortable with, and again, coming from an athlete's mindset, everything's a win or a loss.
Yeah.
And I had to recategorize, well, what does a win mean now at this stage as an adult? And a win means sometimes like, yeah, you got to let that go. That's a win.
Yeah. Or just being.
Or just be present
Yeah.
right here, that you're still winning. And again, it took time, and it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
But I'm more excited about the journey now, because again, our tool sets are more well equipped to deal with some of the tougher things that we may not have that background in.
Yeah.
So I think that even though there's no quote unquote right or wrong way to do it, that's why awareness for me is step number
Paramount for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're obviously like talking about like we sound like we're absolute masculine, feminine energy experts. By no means is the case. But how do you see this integrating deeper, as you're going forward?
I think even if I don't know or have the answers to any situation, or if I'm talking to somebody who's going through something, well, let me take a step back. One of the tough things I think for us to do is to be present when somebody around us is going through a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I feel now, especially moving forward, is I'm going to be one of these people going through a tough time. And so if I'm able to, if I know what it feels like to create that comfortable environment, I'm more well equipped to provide that, because I think I can speak for both of us to say like we're the ones in our friends group that people come to a lot.
Yep.
And they want to
guidance.
What do I do here?
Therapy.
We do that for each other,
yeah.
Right? And we know how we want to feel.
Yep.
So therefore, we're it's easier for us to operate in that space and to kind of create a comfortable space for our loved ones to be able to bounce back between both sides of energies and find that balance. And I think I just have a new goal. Is just get deeper and deeper and deeper into that balance. Understand that there are still things that I have to uncover, still things that I have to try and experiment with. And that to me is a much more relaxed place to operate from than by some point I need to have the answers.
Yeah.
By some point I need to, have it quote unquote all figured out. Because that whole idea of having things figured out it's just not it. It's just not a fun way
Can we
to
all
live.
just like say
just
none of us know what we're doing, and none of us have it all figured out. No one knows what they're doing. Everyone wakes up with self-doubt and I think that's like the biggest fallacy of like a human being is you look at someone else and you're like, oh, they know exactly what they're doing. It's like maybe for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
But
even like we're all social media based right now, right? And somebody might have a really dope post like these are the 12 things that I'm going to accomplish, and this is January, so we're seeing a lot of just intention being set right now.
So we're seeing a lot of masculine energy presenting straightforward. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm
about to knock out. I'm about to do these things, and I think it's great to see.
Yep.
But where it gets a little dangerous is again you start comparing yourself.
Of course.
Dang, I don't have my things figured out yet.
Right.
Or maybe I should I like those goals. Maybe I should do those too. When do they really relate to
Align.
your
Yeah.
where you're at in your center? Because that person could have just thought about that morning,
Right.
or just posted something because they haven't posted something in a while, and it's the time and space to be able to do things like that. So
And the balance of that is actually just being in the
yeah,
space. Maybe
exactly.
not announcing so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the way that I want to show up with a deeper integration of balanced masculine and feminine energy is surrendering. So continuing to lean into, I feel like it's kind of in alignment with yours, but like
Yeah.
leaning into that feminine energy of not always having to drive the ship, the bus, the vehicle forward.
Yeah.
I know what I like, I know what I want. And especially when that shows up in romantic relationships, I want him to ask me out, I want to go here, I want to do this. Like those are things that I know. But it's going to be better for me, better for us in the long term if I allow some breathing room to have both of us in alignment with the pace and the direction. So whenever I try to force something or whenever I try to push something forward and the other person is not kind of at the same space or place, that's when I get my feelings hurt. That's when I encounter heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm like, catch up, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Like,
And it's
don't you
like,
see it? Don't you? Yeah.
And that's just not how human beings work. And so surrendering is like my key word this year. And for me, that's really hard because, I have some control freak tendencies and, I'm very specific of things I like. So
yeah. But
so hold me to that.
we shall see, because if the next time we're talking about a date and I don't hear any inkling of surrender, I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah, please do.
And I think I'm really glad that you said surrender too, because again, what does that have a connotation with? Like, oh, you're giving in, and
no.
like,
surrendering is just not about, like I said, holding something so tightly that it doesn't have room to breathe and grow and be its own entity. So for instance, like our dating relationship, like so badly, I was like, this guy is dope. Like, why doesn't he want to be with me? And like surrendering was allowing our relationship to transpire how it was supposed to be. And this is how it's supposed to be. And that's gorgeous. And like, that's exactly an example of just allowing things some breathing room. So I'm glad we tackled this because I was a little nervous.
It's heavy.
It's not heavy. I mean, it's just, it's new. I think it's new thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, even how you said how you were brought up. These are new things that we constantly get to choose and evolve in. And that's self-growth. That's intimacy with ourselves and intimacy with our partners. And like, what better way to cover that? So.
Get that balance,
Get that balance.
Get that balance. Get the
We're
journal.
We're talking energies, baby.
Get the journal. I highly recommend. First of all, let's talk about journals for a quick second. I feel like I'm running on. Yeah. We can definitely wrap it up. This is awesome. I'm glad that we tackled this. And I look forward to seeing everybody's comments on this. I feel like it's a very
oh my gosh, that's such a good point. Let's see how you're showing up with your feminine and masculine energies. And we'd love to hear from you. I think that'd be so dope to hear everyone else's experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Adios.